Well, good day, everybody. This is John Giardinelli. I'm the association's attorney, and I've been doing these rants now for a couple of years, and we're going to do one today on cooperation. What I did is I talked to our professional standards administrator, Lori Smith, and she indicates that the #1 call she's getting is all forms of lack of broker and or agent cooperation. And so I want to talk about what a bad idea that is. And let me just kind of give you the 30,000 foot, and then we'll do a dive into some specifics. #1, if you fail to cooperate and it causes your client damages, it could be because you didn't get a high enough purchase price because others were out there with higher prices, or it could be terms, or it could be anything at all that causes your client a monetary loss. You could be susceptible to civil damages. According to the Department of Real Estate, failure to cooperate and submit offers that have come in from another office is their #1 call. At least it was, it may still be, because the job of the Department of Real Estate is to protect clients. And if you're not protecting your client, you could get yourself in a lot of trouble. If the person you're not cooperating with, or the party happens to be a member of one of the protected classes, and in California you have 22, but even under NAR's Article 9 of the Code of Ethics, race, disability, issues regarding familial status, sexual orientation. If you don't cooperate and that person falls into one of those categories, you could have problems with the Department of Fair Housing. Again, and that could become a financial burden on you. You could have problems with the Department of Real Estate, which could lead to the loss of your license. And you could have problems at the association under Article 9, which could cost you up to $15,000 in fines and result in the matter being reported to the Department of Real Estate as a violation of the public trust. You could be in violation of MLS rules by failing to cooperate. There is a clear MLS rule and a clear statutory duty under the MLS rules to cooperate. The primary purpose of the existence of the multiple listing service is to cooperate with each other. And then, of course, there is the Code of Ethics, which I'm going to spend most of my time talking about. So again, it is a very bad idea not to cooperate, yet it is the #1 call, the #1 complaint. And so, let's be real, it's something that's happening. It could be a burden on you in that you could be fined substantial amounts of money, be made to take classes, maybe get suspended, maybe have your license, not your license, but your membership revoked. It could result in the loss of your MLS privileges. And that is if you violate any of the cooperation articles. And by those, I mean Articles 1, 2, 3, 11, and 16. So let's take a dive into each of those articles and see what they have to say about cooperation. Article 1 at its basis says you are to protect and promote your client's best and primary interest. That means that that you put your client first, and it's a duty you owe to the client or your customer. You also have an obligation to be fair and honest with everybody else that's a part of the transaction. So again, the cooperation is for the client's best interest. In each of the articles of the Code of Ethics, there are standards of practice which sort of embellish upon what that article means. So let's take a look at that. #1, cooperation and putting your client's best interest first is done either in person or electronically. So it doesn't matter if you're failing to cooperate via the internet, it's still a violation of Article 1. All offers under Article 1, Standard Practice 1-6, all offers must be submitted objectively and as quickly as possible. There's other articles which also touch upon that. Articles 1.7 or Standard Practice 1.7 and 1.8 deal with the fact that you're to respond quickly if someone asks you for written confirmation. But at the core, the bottom line is all offers are submitted objectively to your client until the transaction closes. Unless your client has provided you with a written instruction, they have seen all the offers they want to see. You do not need to show property that has had an accepted offer, but of course you must disclose the existence of the offer. So again, cooperate with each other. Number 2, Article 2, you are not to misrepresent, exaggerate, or conceal. In other words, whether it's about the property or the transaction, you don't misrepresent things about the property, including its availability. You don't exaggerate to your client. You don't do these kinds of things because, again, it's a surefire way of ending up in civil court, DRE, or the Association of Realtors. Article 3 is the cooperation article. You have a duty to your client, not a duty to yourself or a duty to the other agent because of a commission issue, but you have a duty to cooperate with all other real estate people except when that cooperation would not be in your client's best interest. Client will usually dictate that, or there needs to be some objectively verifiable reason why your refusal to cooperate with another brokerage, another agent, another broker is not in your client's best interest. That means you disclose all accepted offers if asked. Number 2, if you have a different rate, if you're going to double end the deal. So for example, you have a 4.5% contract, but if you end up with both sides of the transaction, or your office ends up with both sides of the transaction, and you're willing to give the client a bit of a haircut, say down to 4%, whatever it is, that is something you must disclose to all other real estate professionals and notify the multiple listing service. You do not misrepresent ever, under any circumstances, the availability of the property. If the property is available and it needs to be available at the direction of whatever the seller or owner have told you, it is a mandatory duty that you have, that you disclose the availability of the property, open houses, appointments, whatever it is. If you play games with availability, that's going to be a fiduciary duty violation and a violation of the Code of Ethics. And if there's monetary loss to your client because of higher offers or whatever that might be, you're in trouble. Additionally, you show the property as often and as reasonably practical as possible, depending upon what your client has instructed you on how to show the property. If you do open houses, if you have a lockbox, if you are doing it by appointment, you need to make the property available for showing and for inspections. Now, that gets dangerously close to breach of contract because you're already in escrow and people want to inspect. You share relevant information. There are some confidential information regarding your client's financial position and so forth, but otherwise you share information about the property that you have. You make the property available at all reasonable times pursuant to whatever your client has instructed, and you do not discriminate. There's actually a standard of practice, 3-7 or 3-11, I apologize, that says specifically you do not discriminate against anyone. It is a violation of the duty to cooperate, and it is a breach of your client's fiduciary duty to your client for their fiduciary duty. You under Article 11. Article 11 is the article that says you are to remain competent. And it's pretty clear, based on all of the standards of practice, that failure to cooperate is a competency issue, no different than your duty to keep up on relevant information that comes to your knowledge. So again, it is based on what is reasonably expected of a reasonably competent realtor in whatever situation you find yourself in. Article 16 is taken on new and significant importance because of the issuance of the new buyer representation agreements. You will not engage in any practice or take any action that is inconsistent with another real estate professional's exclusive representation. Now, up until December the 19th, that usually meant an exclusive listing agreement. However, now that we have the buyer broker representation agreements that allow brokers to represent buyers exclusively, you now have a duty to not interfere with the exclusive buyer representation that another real estate professional might have. You are to not take any action that would be inconsistent with those rights of representation and or exclusive brokerage. And that duty is generally limited to other realtors. But be careful, because under the civil law, if you interfere with someone else's contract, that could be considered a tort for which you could be sued under the civil law. So don't play games. If someone else has an exclusive contract, you stay away from it. That means no personal or telephonic solicitations. And you need to be very careful, especially if there's a do not call situation. It means that you take no action to interfere with someone's through the mail or other forms of written solicitation directly and intentionally and purposefully to a seller or to a buyer that is under an exclusive contract. But you can send out general. So for example, if you're going to be farming Meadowview and you send everything to everyone in Meadowview that if you're interested in listing your property, the market, blah, blah, blah. Or you put an ad in the newspaper that if you're looking for a house and it's to the general population, that's okay. You probably should put a disclaimer that if you are currently listed with another real estate professional exclusively, please do not call. This does not apply to you. And if you want to know what the limitations on all this are, read through Article 16 and those standards of practice. And then finally, even if you are taking a strong marketing position, and there's nothing wrong with being aggressive, but you got to be extra careful, particularly because we've now gotten both seller and buyer exclusive agreements, listing and buyer representation. You need to be really careful with buyers now. We had a professional standards training session recently with the people that hear these ethics cases, and they made it pretty clear that you're required to ask, and that is now the CAR says it, NAR says it, it is the standard of practice that you will always ask a buyer when they come in, are you working with another realtor or real estate professional? And if the answer is yes, you better ask, is the agreement that you have in writing, and was it exclusive? Because if it's an exclusive agreement, hands off, take no action, do not interfere. So again, be very, very cautious about that, because it could get you in a lot of trouble with the professional standards people. It could cost you a lot of money. And if they find that you did it intentionally and purposefully and knowingly, it's going to cost you quite a bit of money. Under 16.3 and 16.4, a buyer or seller, if asked, must disclose the expiration date of that exclusive agreement. So if I have if I'm interested, or a seller calls me and says they're dissatisfied, and you call the office and you ask them, what is the expiration date? and they don't tell you, you can take additional steps. You can then call, for example, the client and say, what is the expiration date? Send me over a copy. But you cannot help them cancel that agreement. Again, take a look at 16.9 because it talks about reasonable efforts to determine the exclusivity of a representation. And again, you should limit all dealings with people who have exclusive representation, and make it clear that without consent in writing, and without other issues, you cannot represent them. That does not prevent you from negotiating the terms of an agreement after the expiration date, but that's all you're allowed to do. So again, you also cannot knowingly put the client in a position where they're going to be paid two commissions. So again, you got to cooperate with each other. You run the risk of some really serious things happening to you. You could be reported to the Department of Real Estate. You could pay a large fine. So do it at your own risk. But if you do, it's very, very conceivable that you could end up in some serious hot water with professional standards, with the civil courts, with the Department of Fair Housing, with the Department of Real Estate. So again, until the next time, this is John Giardinelli. If you have a topic you'd like me to rant on, give me an email, send me an email, or send Lori an email. She'll get that to me, and we'll be happy to accommodate that if it's a topic of general interest. So thank you for watching this video. Hopefully you found it helpful. Thank you and good day.